So this is my video 91, and I have about, let me check, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. After this video, I have only 9 videos to go before I reach my current goal of 100 videos on YouTube, which were created to practice my spoken language. Yes. So, first a little bit of grammar in English. Reported speech is not very often popular topic for me to practice during my spoken practice, because usually I retell the content of the stories in the narrative style, and I never try to retell the dialogues between characters. But sometimes I meet this particular exercise in the books on grammar, and the most basic usage of this changing of the direct speech into the, or maybe just changing the direct speech into the reported speech, is when they have he said, she said, and then I need to create this subordinate clause. I need to put it into the right tenses, which mean I need to do this shift, like one step back in the past. And it is a challenge on its own, but at some point I had a question about how do this works with another tenses, not just the past simple in the main clause, which is the subject of learning during performing these exercises. And I discovered in a wonderful book by Kachalova and Izraelevich, created like maybe 60 years ago, that the most difficult case is this, but generally speaking, all possible reported speech options should be discussed, which means they divide the main clause tenses in 3 categories, like the past forms, the future forms, and the present forms. So for the past forms, we have this time shift in the subordinate clause, but in the main clause, in the form of the past tense, generally there may be three tenses, like past simple, past continuous, and past perfect. I think that past perfect, where is it? I think that past perfect continuous is not the tense which is used to express that somebody talks or creates some particular thought. But the idea is all the three of past tenses requires, in the main clause, require the shift to the past, one step to the past, in the subordinate clause. When in the main clause the tenses in the present form, like present simple, present continuous, even present perfect, then the tenses in the subordinate clause should be expressed the same way they are expressed in the direct speech. There is no any shift in tenses. And the same goes with the future forms. They use this future simple, future continuous, future perfect in the main clause with the same tense in the subordinate clause, which was used when it was the direct speech. So everything is quite logical. I think the main difficulty I had was about present perfect, because when we translate it in Russian, it becomes just the past tense, because in Russian there is no these forms. In Russian there are only three forms: present, future, and simple and past. That's why when present perfect is translated into Russian, we have this past form, which is undistinguished from the translation from past simple or even past perfect. And really present perfect feels like the action in the past. That's why I thought that it should require the same time shift in the subordinate clause as past simple does. But it looks like there goes the okay. I can't remember the word, even in Russian, what I want to say. Okay, formal. Here goes the formal rule, which means that if we have present in the name of the tense or future, then the direct speech remains the same in the subordinate clause. But if we have past something in the main clause, then we make this shift to the past. And the shift itself is quite interesting, because most of the time I learned only some particular forms which are basic for the school English. I didn't try to dig into the university level English for linguistic universities, but now in Kachalova and Izraelevich I have this coverage of every form. Like all the future forms shift into the future in the past. All with the present forms we can say like this. Simple present into the past present, simple present continuous into the past continuous, and present perfect into the past perfect. Yeah, and I think present perfect continuous into the past perfect continuous. So with the present forms, the shift is quite simple, and it is it is as simple as with the future forms. When for the future forms, everything shifts into the future. Everything shifts into the future. In the past, for the present forms, everything shifts into the past, corresponding past form. But with the past forms, we have some interesting changes. For example, past simple shifts into the past simple into the past perfect. Well, it's kind of obvious because I learned this all the time. I never used this, but I learned this all the time. I never had used this, but I learned this all the time. Yeah. Okay, I never used in the past. But with the past continuous, I met this rule for the first time. Maybe it is beyond the scope of the 11th grade education in English at school, but that's an interesting past continuous shifts into past perfect continuous. The same way like past simple shifts into the past perfect. And the two remaining forms of the past terms, past tenses, like past perfect and past perfect continuous, they didn't shift at all. They remain in the same form they are. It's like the deepest shift into the past which is possible in English grammar. And that's all right, because in Russian we don't have shifts in the past, and people understand each other quite all right. They add some words that describe the situation, so we understand when it was yesterday or 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. The same way in English they use these indicators, but these indicators correspond to the correct shifts in the forms of English tenses in the subordinate clauses. Anyway, that's quite an interesting discovery that I made for myself, and I don't think I'll use all these forms, but at least I know that if I have some particular form in the subordinate, in the direct speech, I need to shift it the right way. Because without this knowledge, I felt kind of uncertain. First of all, I didn't learn this rule, so maybe this rule doesn't exist. And the second, if this rule works, what should I choose? Should I choose as the formal rule, or should I choose as an intuitive rule? But when I know the formal rule, it's kind of logical. That's why I know that I need to follow my logic. And another interesting shift, which is quite logical, and I learned this before, but I almost never used it because I never performed such exercises, and I don't need this stuff in my everyday speech. When they use this thing like when the direct speech contains something like I will be at home when you comes from work. In the direct speech, we have already this interesting thing. Yeah, in the direct speech we have already this interesting thing that in if clause or when clause we don't use the future form, but we use the present simple form or present continuous form. But when this shift happens, then in the subordinate clause, again, the future form in the main clause changes. In the main clause of the direct speech changes into the future in the past, but the present form in the if or when clause of the direct speech changes into the past simple or past perfect. It's logical, but because I never used it in my speech and I didn't meet it much in books, they usually use the direct speech. In different courses on different knowledge, they usually talk about the facts without these quotations. So that's quite an interesting knowledge that I gained today, and I believe if I learn some or rediscover for myself some particular topic which I used before but in some limited area, and which I can understand fully because of my current knowledge of English, of my current practice of talking English during the last year, then it will be alright, because there is not so many, there are not so many topics, main topics. I mean, for example, I can look at the present tenses like one topic, like 4 present tenses: simple continuous, perfect, perfect continuous. Then the second topic is past tenses, the third is future tenses, and then future in the past. So we have 4 topics, and each topic has this logical set of tenses which are based on the present, past, future. Another way to talk at this stuff is to go, if we put all these 16 tenses into the table, then we went through the columns, and now we can go through the rows, and then I can look at all the perfect tenses, like past, future, past, present, future, future in the past. And the same goes for perfect continuous tenses, for continuous tenses, and for simple tenses. And this way I have this system in my head which kind of understands, shows me the difference between some tense, some form, like perfect continuous, but in the different future, past styles. And then I can look at the style, like past style, but look at different forms. This really helps to create the system in the head, and it's easier to use the system, at least my brain works this way, than just the additional independent elements which in the end compose the system, but I just don't know that. It's like I can try to learn 50 main chemical elements, but if I know that they are in the periodic table, then brain will systemize the information in the columns and in the rows much better. So this is one of my discoveries, my latest discovery in English, a great discovery, because, well, I learned this, but now I apply my spoken skills to this stuff. And of course, the basic grammar is used for past main form, past main clause plus subordinate clause with this shift, and they have this shift of the words, like today becomes the day before, tomorrow becomes the following day, yesterday, no, today, then, yesterday, the day before, tomorrow, the day, the following day. And the interesting stuff, like 5 years ago changes into 5 years before, and last anything changes into anything before, like last month, the month before, last week, the week before, last weekend, the weekend before. It's kind of it's not obvious, but if you have this table in your head that ago and last something changes into the last, is quite simple, because when I kind of felt this for the first time, I was unsure. Well, we say ago, like before, but should we use last as before? Because maybe there is another. It's kind of strange that two different words changed into this before, but when you learn it, it becomes logical. The same way, past simple and present perfect change into the past perfect, and you can't distinguish from it what tense was used in many cases. But if, for example, they used the particular date, like past simple in 1995, then past perfect in 1995 means this stuff, not just random stuff. Quite an interesting question I have, and I'm going to make a note about it. So I think that is all with the grammar for the direct and indirect speech. And now I'm going to talk I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of arcs in Harry Potter books, and compare them to other arcs, maybe in Naruto. So, after reading, and maybe even Lord of the Ring. So, the Lord of the Ring. So, in Harry Potter there are 7 books, and actually the first book may be the best one in terms of the introduction. They have this book has quite everything to introduce the basic setting. I don't like the book itself because it has about a third, or even more than a third, of the story dedicated to the life of Harry Potter in the Dursleys. But other than that, especially when Hagrid came for him. Then they went to Hogsmeade, then to this Diagonal Valley shopping district, and then to the Hogwarts Express and to the Hogwarts itself. It's quite alright. The second book is more like the fillers. It's quite cool that this basilisk was introduced, and there was the story of Hagrid as a student, and the Tom Riddle as the student as well. But all the stuff about the professor of the dark arts who always who believed to be a celebrity, and then he turned out to be a fraud. All this stuff is not very cool like the story, but in the whole. But reading some particular chapters and just for the sake of. So the second book as the story is quite feels like fillers which are not very interesting at all. But how the reading for the sake of reading, I like it better than the first one. The third story is more interesting, but it's more like detective oriented around this abandoned hut in the Hogsmeade village, and about the Hogsmeade village in general, plus this I don't know the name, Willow, some fighting Willow or something like that. So at first it sounded really cool, and when I was introduced when I was lent the Harry Potter books, the third and the fourth one, because the first two I read at some point and I didn't get how cool they were. But when I read the third one, I liked it very much as the detective story. But it's not so cool to reread it. And well, I like the particular idea about the Patronus. When Harry needed to create the Patronus, and for this he needed to think about something. And first he tried to think about flying on the broom for the first time, but then he recalled the feeling which he had when he discovered that he was a wizard. So this is a very strong idea, but the idea is stronger than the way it is introduced in the story. And of course, the Dementors, quite an interesting characters. And again, the characters and the ideas are stronger than the story itself. The fourth story was even cooler for me, with this Olympiad stuff and the resurrection of Voldemort. But in the end, this detective story about stunning some guy or killing some guy, then changing him into the bone and dig over, I don't know, and let's say digging this bone somewhere in the woods is not so cool. It's not so cool. So yeah, again, this story feels more like for one-time read without. I don't even know. Oh yeah, I remember now. Another cool character who was introduced in the second book was this Dumby, or whoever he was, the home elf of Malfoy's, and it was really cool. And I like the way they adapted this into the movie. Really, I like the second movie most compared to the first one, to the third, even to the fourth. Next, in the fifth, yeah, I prefer the fifth movie more because the story was too long. The fifth book was too long. Lots of additional stuff which should enrich the story, but it's just a garbage which get kind of in the way of the story. And the final battle when Voldemort wanted to possess Harry but couldn't because Harry was filled with such amount of love that Voldemort couldn't stand it, being in possession of Harry Potter. So it's really, I can't say this is a big shit thing, but I don't like it at all. The only interesting stuff about it, well, it's this, what is it? This room which appeared when they wanted. I don't like this Marge, whoever she is, in her pink dress. Well, and the fact that his uncle was killed is not really interesting either. Well, it was not a big revelation or something. But then there was the sixth book, and it was really, really cool. Well, again, some stories are quite too long, some chapters, but the overall detective story about Malfoy plotting to kill the headmaster, Dumbledore, and then the way he failed several times, like the girl got the, was this pendant or something, necklace, and in the Hogsmeade, and then Ron drank this bottle, and yeah, and the book itself, this textbook on the dark arts, which Harry used the cheating stuff to create the best potions for Slughorn. And the idea about Bezoar, when he used Bezoar, no, first when, well, actually I don't remember, maybe they are two different stories. The first one, when he created a perfect potion and got this Felix Felicis thing, then he chose the Bezoar against all as an antidote against antibiotic, antidote, and instead of against of most of the poisons. Then he used this Bezoar thing to save Ron. And of course, this Felix Felicis thing, when he drank it and he got the information about Horcruxes from Slughorn, and he pretended that he gave Ron this drink. He pretended that he gave Ron this drink, and Ron protected the gates of Gryffindor team in the Quidditch game. And next, what is next? The fact about Horcruxes and the stuff when they went towards this distant cave where Dumbledore drank this liquid, and they got the pendant, but it was already taken by someone before. It had been already taken by someone before. And then when Malfoy defeated Dumbledore, but Snape killed Dumbledore. And especially this last scene when everyone came to pay the what they pay, honor or something to the Dumbledore's grave, funerals, and yeah, this interesting story when Hermione was already with Ron, and Ginny said that she loved Harry, but they departed because he was going for Horcruxes, and she stayed in Hogwarts and with her family. So I should say that it was the best book in the series, and the seventh book, well, it was interesting, with Harry looking for the Horcruxes, and the story about the strongest wand, and this special stone, and this invisibility cloak, which were possessions of the first three brothers. And then how Harry learned about Dumbledore's past, and his brother and his sister and Grindelwald. And then he returned back to Hogwarts, and there was a great battle. And finally, Harry defeated Voldemort, and then this was this shift, like 10 years forward, when they all met at the King Cross station, and he saw off his second son into Hogwarts. Anyway, the sixth book is the best. I don't like some particular chapters, but again, other chapters are just the best. That's why in the pool of the best books of all time, between some English readers made by BBC maybe, the Harry Potter's sixth book listed the first one in the series, and then the first book comes, because the sixth book is the best one. And I wanted to give this idea that in the third book she introduced this time machine, but it was very cheating device, and they could use it to change the past, kill Voldemort when Dumbledore first encountered him somewhere in the orphanage. So it was not the best idea, but if we think about it, each book has quite an interesting idea in it, and some of these ideas moved through the rest of the books. So even though the whole picture is not so consistent, some books are quite weak, like the fifth book, for example. And even not all the chapters of the best book, which is the Half-Blood Prince, the story itself is really, really good. I can say the same about the Lord of the Ring. The plot about putting two hobbits to deliver the ring and then destroying this ring, and then when they destroyed the ring, Sauron decided that he was defeated, but at that moment his army was stronger than the army of elves and I'm not sure about elves, like the army of Gondor and Rohan. So basically Sauron could defeat all this army with Legolas and Gimli, with Gandalf and Aragorn, could defeat with the forces he had gathered. But for some reason, he decided to die when he learned that the ring was destroyed. And again, another problem, why he didn't just put the, why he just didn't put the fence around this, I'm sure, Anduin volcano where they destroyed the ring. But if we don't look at it, at this obvious kind of hole in the story, if we don't look at it, the story itself is wonderful. The story, it's cool to read the description of their adventures, the events that happened, different characters which were introduced by Tolkien. And I can say the same for Naruto manga. Again, the first part is the best one, even though it may be quite quick in the switch between different arcs. But the second part of Naruto is really not so good. Additional characters like Sai and that wood guy, and main characters except for Naruto and Sasuke were not developed much, or the guys from the Leaf Village. And this really boring, really long, really useless battle between everyone against everyone and against the 10 Tails and then against the Infinite Tsukuyomi. And but in the end, I can choose some arcs which were really, really cool, and I can reread them and I can get the same feeling I get from the Tolkien's story and from Harry Potter books. So in the end, the fact that this stuff exists, and the fact that some of the solutions are really cool. All this negates the fact that something was not so cool. But because Rowling didn't have time to write all the books and then do the re-edition, like remove this time machine stuff from the third book, for example, or the fact that mangaka who drew Naruto did not have the power to put all his ideas into this story, like dedicate the whole volume for each of the villages. It doesn't diminish. It doesn't diminish the fact that the story is wonderful, because, for example, Tolkien wrote the whole story, but in the end we have this problem with the volcano set unguided, being unguided, and with the idea that after destroying the ring, the Sauron fell. Sauron could really defeat the army, and then of Gondor and whoever they were, Rohan, and then he could get all 3 rings from the elves, or at least he could get all 9 elf rings from his well, I forgot the names, Dark Riders, and forge 1 ring from them. It wouldn't be so so powerful as the ring of the power, but at least it would be something. So I don't know why this kind of obvious right now for me hole in the plot was not overseen by Tolkien, and was not remade, whole was not built up or mended, was not mended or meant by Tolkien. Well, anyway, the stories are so cool, each of them, that it doesn't matter that some of them I don't like. The stuff which I like gives me enough emotions to love them, to continue to love them, these stories. So that's all. I think this is all for the video 91 for today.